Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Stroke Empowerment Sessions. My name is Letitia Living. I'm a survivor of 3 ischemic strokes and an author of Finding Yourself After Stroke. I'm joined by a special guest today, one of my amazing co-authors in the book, Finding Yourself After Stroke. Welcome, Fred. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Letitia. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. It's Wednesday for us today. We're in the same time zone.
Yes.
So tell us, Fred, a little bit about your story. Who were you? Who was Fred prior to having a stroke?
Prior to having a stroke, I was an accountant in those days. I was probably in between contracts. My eldest daughter got married 2 months beforehand, so we were and I finished a contract in middle of December, and I was going to take 3 or 4 weeks off, but the 8th of January came and I had a stroke. So a lot changed from that time onwards.
So you were planning time off, but you ended up having forced time off.
Basically, yes.
So tell us about should we go back in history with regards to things that happened prior to your stroke, or do we want to
Maybe a
chat
good
about...
idea, that way people will get an idea. I was 46, 47, and I started to get pains in my hands and my knees. And my mother had rheumatoid arthritis, and I was thinking to myself, I've probably got rheumatoid arthritis. And I tried the whole off going off to get it confirmed. Finally, I went and saw our local doctor, and he turned around, gave me some tests, gave me a blood test, and said, come back in 3 days. I went back, and nice bloke he was. He walked in and said, Fred, congratulations, you haven't got bowel cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I went, so I've got rheumatoid, I thought this, I've got rheumatoid arthritis. Long story short, we had to find a rheumatologist, and my wife knew of one who was actually my mother's last rheumatologist, just by the way, but that was just more of the fact that he was the best rheumatologist my wife knew, and wouldn't want me to have anybody else. So then I moved on. I learned to live with rheumatoid arthritis. My father had a heart attack at 54. I got the 53. 14th of December 2014. I had I went shopping. I was heading back home, jumped on the car, and I got this massive pain in my chest. So I thought I'll drive home and see how we're going. So I was driving home, and I thought I'd better ring my missus. So I rang my missus and said, I've got a massive pain in my chest. And she went, that doesn't sound good. Where are you? I said, I'm almost home. She said, you're driving, aren't you? I went, yes. So we called a doctor who called an ambulance, and I went to Concord Hospital and found out that I had not 1 but 2 heart attacks.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a pretty big day. And then I had probably a week and a half in hospital and went back home. And then I went and got quadruple bypass in January 2015. And in May 2015, I got a defibrillator put in, which is like a pacemaker with far more benefits within it. So,
did they put the Defib in because you kept having complications after the heart attacks?
no, it's more of the simple reason that my the right side of my heart is very damaged.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it doesn't pump properly, and they've got a scale of your heart pounding, and it was on the low side, so they put the defibrillator in to make sure if there's problems, it will pick it up quickly. So I've got a defibrillator, which will probably in 12 months' time probably need to get a replacement battery, but that's life. Yeah, I think it's, well, maybe the year after. They're not real sure how long they live, so they tell me from next year onwards they've got to be a lot more careful on how it goes. It's meant to get 10 years, but I think he gets a little bit worried about it just giving up, so they tend to pull him a little bit earlier. So then on the we get to the 8th of January 2020. I woke up about quarter to 5 in the morning. I always wake up early. Di was heading off to work. She left between 5:15 and 5:30. We had a quick talk. She went to work. I went to take my car for a service, and I was walking home. Felt great. Came home, made a cup of tea, and from then on, I'm not real sure what went on. The rest of the day is a blur. I remember putting the TV on, putting the kettle on. Now, I don't remember whether I drank the tea or not, or anything else. But the last thing I remember is I was going to change channels and I was laying on the couch, and I went to pick up the remote and it fell off the couch, which is only a small couch, but I still made a bang. My son was at home. He wandered down to ask me what's happened, and I just go, and he went, "Oh, this isn't good." So he went and rang my wife, and she said, "Ring an ambulance." He rang an ambulance, and then they took me to Westmead Hospital because I live in that Parramatta area. And so Ben rang Di and said what was going on. So she left Royal North Shore Hospital, drove to Westmead. By the time she got to Westmead, they realised the surgeon who was going to do the clot retrieval had gone to North Shore. So they just put me back in an ambulance and took me to Royal North Shore. So I had to stop. She rang the girls to tell them not to head to Westmead, but to head to Royal North Shore, and everybody moved from Westmead to Royal North Shore. So, and they did the and then I woke up and they told me that I'd had a stroke and that I've got aphasia. And I kind of go, okay, what's aphasia?
What's aphasia?
And from then, and so that was basically that day, as much as I can remember. I remember that I had to tell them who was in that room with us, which was good. And thankfully, Chloe and her husband Craig didn't come, so I only had to remember 5 people.
And could you?
Yes. So it was Di, Ben, Declan, and Siobhan, who's our other daughter. So it's 4, and myself. So that's 5, because I had to remember who I was as well. Which always a bit of a problem. So and then they asked you to name 10 words that start with F, and I'm thinking, it's got to be something easier than that. I won't say the first word that I came, but I think most people can guess it. So, and I think I struggled to get 4 or 5 of them. But as they said, that isn't uncommon at the time, because you've just basically woken up and you've had a reasonably large event.
So did they do the tests to figure out that you'd had a stroke at the first hospital, or was it they suspected it and then they moved you to the second hospital and did the tests there?
I think it was a bit of, I think they had a pretty good idea from when they picked me up that I'd had a stroke. And I think they did some tests at Westmead, and that's when they decided they needed to get the clot removed quickly.
And was your clot retrieval successful?
Yes, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Although they did put me on warfarin, but that's just one of those things.
Are you still on warfarin today?
Still on warfarin, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, probably for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So that was the day that was quite unexpected. So you've taken your car in for a service and then woken up in hospital, being told that you've had a stroke and now you have aphasia.
Yes, that was basically the day.
And so what happened then? What happened? Did you have to go and have rehab?
I spent 7 days in Royal North Shore Hospital. Yeah, and they basically watched me, did some physical work, did a little bit of work on the aphasia. Then I went and spent 2 or 3 weeks at Ride Rehab, which had changed a lot from the time when my father was there. They'd actually knocked it down and rebuilt it.
Yeah.
So, and it was a really nice new building compared to the old one where my father was. So that was a very interesting time.
And also challenging too, because this was the beginning of the start of the pandemic. So was your recovery hindered by that?
Yes and no, because the way the system works in Sydney anyway, I could go to Concord Hospital, which wasn't far from where I live, to get all the rehab done. I rang up and got told it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks before they start, and we're going okay. And then the pandemic started to get worse, and we were sitting there thinking, I don't think it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. It could be 6 to 8 months. So then we thought about it. They gave me a list of speech therapists. So I went and rang 3 or 4 of them, spoke to probably 2 of them because they're the only 2 that either returned the call or answered the call. So I picked the one I thought sounded the better of it. So I still actually use her today, or one of her team, and she's very good. The physical part, we've used a physiotherapist for probably 35 years, been at the same one. So I just went and spoke to her about it. And at the time, because of the pandemic, they were starting to do Pilates classes on a video. So basically a Zoom session every day. You paid X amount and you could do it. And if you wanted to do 5 of them, you could do 5. If you want to do 2, you could do 2. So it was that type of thing. So and a lot of that had the balance work I needed. And she gave me some extra ideas. So I was using the Pilates and the exercises she gave me to strengthen up my body. And she also said walking was a good idea. So I started to walk more.
Well, it's good that you, through all of that, that there was so much support for you and your physical and speech therapy, and that you could do things from home. Did you think that you benefited from the telehealth and the online Pilates and things like that? Do you think it would have been any different going to in person, or it still really, really helped you being able to access therapy from home?
I think both ways would have been helpful. The physical I could probably have done myself, but you like to make sure that the way you're doing it is a good way of doing it. So being able to get it even via telly makes it better than not doing anything at all. So
Yeah.
and the speech pathology is probably the more important one, especially in the beginning of it. It helped a lot more than not having any help at all.
Yeah. And so this was when we were talking back in the beginning, you were saying you were planning time off, but then you've ended up having forced time off. Can you tell everybody, did you end up having to go back to work, or what happened for you there?
Um, my daughter Siobhan's a social worker, so the first thing she did was she rang my finance manager, and he turned around and said, well, he has enough money never to go back to work. And I think that was the only words Siobhan wanted to hear was, good, so you're not going back to work. So I I probably would have liked to try to go back to work, but the fact was there was no need to go back to work. So we went and got new wills done, and a couple of other finance and guardianships done. So all that's done, so we'll never have to worry about that again.
So you had the financial security, which would have taken a lot of pressure off. Did you feel, even though you did have that financial security, that it was a bit of an identity loss by not being able to return to your position?
I probably never thought about it because I thought, well, I don't need to work. I probably, in a way, probably was that, but because I was struggling a lot with the aphasia, I think the fact that I didn't have to go back to work made life a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I was probably pleased that, yeah, I had made some
You had
choices.
options.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
made very good choices financially when I was very young.
Yeah.
That made it possible when I got older to survive without needing to go back to work.
And I think that's some really vital advice for anybody who's listening in, especially people who haven't had a stroke or a health emergency, is you never know when it's going to happen to you. And if you can get that insurance through superannuation or whatever prior to something happening, because you don't know, it can certainly bring you and your loved ones some peace of mind if something does happen.
Oh, yeah, I honestly believe that. My father was very keen for me to have super or something when I was younger. And I think it was a lot came because his father died at 48 and had nothing basically. And so dad was probably 23, 24, something like that when his father passed away. And so he always understood the need to have a nest egg or something that you can fall back on. So yeah, so that was something that I was, basically told and told and told. So I knew that was a good idea, so I did it. Yeah, he didn't. I know he didn't tell me to go and smoke like a chimney.
But you don't smoke now.
No, I don't smoke now. I knew when the rheumatoid arthritis was coming up, it was a good time to start thinking about stop smoking, because I knew that there was a chance I'd end up on methotrexate, because my mother had a lot of trouble with methotrexate cigarettes. And
so was it the stroke that made you stop, or did you stop prior to
No,
smoking?
I actually stopped smoking at about 45, because at that stage of the game I worked out that I'd been smoking for 30 years, which was almost three-quarters of my life. And also my father smoked heavily. So basically I thought, well, the last 45 years I've had cigarette smoke, either sucking it in myself or walking around the house that was always with somebody smoking a cigarette. It's probably not the best way to live your life. So I decided it was a good time to give it up. So I decided to give it up, and I managed to do it without ever really breaking back into it.
That's really good.
And especially when I was smoking probably 30 to 40 a day.
Yeah, you did really well.
Yeah, so
And so tell us, post-stroke, uh, have you found support in support groups? Have you been able to connect with other stroke survivors?
yeah, I've met a few of them through Facebook and Instagram and things like that,
Mhm,
and I go on to a couple of Zoom
mhm,
ones around the place, which I always find very interesting and quite good because you're talking to people who understand what you're saying, and you're
mhm.
not trying to have to explain every part of it, which makes it a lot more enjoyable.
And yeah, exactly. And have you found that that's helped you being able to connect with others who just do get it?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I find it very good. Yeah, even if I'm not in a good mood, I
Mhm.
tend to have a better mood, but after the time the Zoom session's finished than
Oh, that's good.
before I was when I
Yeah.
didn't have one. So yeah, I always find it quite good.
Yeah. And you've got an amazing support system with your family around you. What advice would you give to other people, other supporters of stroke, so families, friends? What advice could you give to them?
I think the one of the big ones is you need time for yourself to actually work your way through your stroke
Mhm.
because there are things that happen that you're not used to. You get
Yeah.
aphasia. So I didn't want people around for a while until I
Right.
got used to having it. So communication, and you just need people to understand what's going on
Mm.
and don't try to bicker them to do things because it's not going to help. The only person who can really do your recovery is you.
That's the best advice.
Yeah. And you've
Yeah.
got to be committed to doing whatever it is that you need to do to make your life the best that you can. And because unfortunately, I believe that you're never going to become the person you were before your stroke again.
Mhm.
And yeah, so you're always going to be this new you. So you've got to make the best of it and enjoy the life as much as you can.
I love that advice. So before we go, is there anything else that you would like to add? Anything that we haven't chatted about, or anything that you would like to say to anybody who is listening in?
I think the big one is just to never give up on yourself
Mhm.
because, as I said before, you've got to be able. The only person who can do it is you. So you've really got to be your own best friend type of thing.
That's right.
Is
I mean,
yeah,
we can all be motivated, but motivation isn't going to get you there. It's the discipline and the repetitive and doing it, actually taking those action steps.
yeah, and it is hard. It's yeah,
Mm.
and there are times when you don't want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to find a way of doing it.
Yeah.
And that is, and it can be difficult, especially early on when it's all very new. But you've just got to learn the best ways you can to do what you need to do.
That's such valuable advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and you had so much gold nuggets, words of wisdom in there to help other people on their post-stroke recovery journey. So thank you for your time today, Fred.
Thanks, Letitia. It's been wonderful.
You're welcome.